The Michigan State Spartans had one of the toughest college football schedules in 2022, and I think for the 2023 season, there is a chance that they will have the toughest schedule in the nation. Welcome back, guys. It's College Football with Sam. I encourage you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already to help this awesome community get to 10,000 subscribers, where I will be doing a giveaway. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you can get notified about the details of that giveaway, and also get notified when I post Big Ten football and college football content. Please like this video and watch it all the way through to get it in the algorithm, and comment your record prediction for Michigan State football for the 2023 season down below. This video isn't a in-depth schedule preview like some of the videos I've been doing for other Big Ten teams, and we'll get around to that for Michigan State, I would say, here in a week, maybe less. But what this is talking specifically about the toughness of the schedule, not going through and pairing the schedule with the depth chart and making predictions about will Michigan State win or lose X amount of games, like, again, I've been doing in these other videos. That's not what's going on here. Not at all. What's going on here is rather Michigan State hosts Washington, Michigan, and Penn State and travels to Ohio State. All of these teams finished in the top 10 this past season. I think all of them will again finish in the top 10 this coming season. If not, all of them will finish in the top 5 or 6. That core group of 4 teams that Michigan State faced this past season, I think all of them will get better compared to their 2022 counterparts. And not only that, but Michigan State has road games against opponents like Minnesota, Iowa, and Rutgers. Teams that are not nearly as good as the former 4 teams that I mentioned, but teams that could contend for going bowling. Teams that could contend for being in the fringe / lower part of a top 25. Minnesota and Iowa specifically. I think Rutgers is still a little bit away from being one of the best 25 teams in the country. But they're road games against solid opponents who have average to solid, above average coaching and or talent. And Michigan State also has to host Maryland and Nebraska, teams that actually have a lot of talent. They're middle of the road / above average in talent for the Big Ten. Nebraska has a new coaching staff. Maryland with Mike Locksley has always had somewhat of a questionable coaching staff, in my opinion, but they have talent and they do have good offenses that, in theory, will probably match up well with what has been poor defensive performance in the Mel Tucker era at Michigan State. That leaves Indiana, which is a road game, Central Michigan, and Richmond as 3 wins that many might include as freebies. In the Indiana game last year just proves that Indiana isn't a freebie. Michigan State's schedule is crazy tough. There's just no way around it. You cannot beat around the bush with this schedule. It's tough. Now, it may not be like South Carolina or some of these SEC school schedules, where just by looking at opponent win-loss margin and looking at, the fact that maybe all the teams they play on their schedule went bowling last year or will go bowling. That's not what this is. But this is the fact that when it comes to teams that are facing high-caliber opponents, Michigan State might have the most high-caliber opponents on any schedule. Again, Washington, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. And don't forget Iowa, who's kind of like that half/5 team on there. And I say that because Iowa isn't at the same caliber that Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and Washington are at. But a road game at Iowa it's always tough to win at Kinnick Stadium, and Iowa has a lot of returning production. They return a decent amount on defense, and they always reload there, and they're bringing in transfers like Cade McNamara, Eric All, Dejon Parker. They're bringing in another offensive lineman from Miami of Ohio and an underrated wide receiver from a lower level football program. Iowa very well could win the West or have a top 20, top 15 finish. That would be very, very realistic. And again, Maryland, Minnesota, those are teams that went 8-5, 9-4, respectively, along with Iowa, who went 8-5 this past season. Michigan State, according to Phil Steele, will have the second toughest schedule, only behind South Carolina. South Carolina's opponent win-loss record is 66%, 103-53. This is taking the record of all the teams that South Carolina is facing in 2023. It's taking their 2022 records and averaging them out. On average, South Carolina's week-by-week opponent wins 2 out of every 3 football games, or on average, they're an 8-4 football team. So on average, South Carolina will be facing an 8-4 football team every time they take the field on Saturday. For Michigan State, number is 62.7% with a 96-57 record. And, they take on Central Michigan, Richmond, and from there, the remaining 10 games are it's a really tough stretch. The Spartans, writes 24/7 Sports, took a step back in year 3 of the Mel Tucker era with a 5-7 record, more than halving their win total from the 2021 season. Michigan State starts the season with winnable games before its real test of the season against Washington in week 3. The Spartans have multiple tough matchups down the stretch and play 8 total games against teams that finished with a winning record last season. This Michigan State team could be a near top 25 team by total performance and efficiency, and they could finish 7-5 or 6-6. That's just the truth. With Penn State, Michigan, and Washington at home, with Iowa, Minnesota, and Ohio State on the road, that is a daunting schedule. Very daunting schedule. And don't overlook Maryland or Nebraska at home, or even Rutgers or Indiana on the road. And what makes it hard for Michigan State and Mel Tucker in 2023, we'll see what 2024 brings, because that's, predicting more than a year into the future, which with the transfer portal and with the ability of some guys who are, top-rated underclassmen to go to the NFL, it's very hard to predict that. But Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State in the 2023 season will likely all be better than their 2022 counterparts. Michigan will likely improve. They're number 5 in returning production, number 3 when you only look at Power 5 teams. Ohio State is once again going to be top 3 in total team talent, and they are above average in returning production. They're top 50. Penn State's not top 50, but they return their offensive line. They return their running backs. The reason they're low in returning production is because they lose their quarterback, which is an important position. But Mike Yurcich has a good reputation with quarterback development. Drew Aller got gobs of playing time in the 2022 season, and he finished with a decent passer rating and a decent QBR. And with most of his tight ends returning, most of his O-line, and Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, Penn State, despite having less returning production than Ohio State and Michigan, should take a step forward from their Rose Bowl winning campaign. So that makes that tougher for the Spartans. It really does. Michigan State, they return Peyton Thorne. They return Jalen Berger. They return Keon Coleman. They return J.D. Duplain and Spencer Brown on the offensive line. And at defensive line, you got Jacoby Windman. You got Simeon Barrow. But the defensive line last year, they had Jacob Slade, Simeon Barrow, Jeff Pietrowski, and because of injuries and because of coaching and scheme, it all fell apart. And the secondary, that's still a question. At linebacker, there are still question marks there, especially in coverage. And again, this isn't like my traditional schedule video, which I'll be doing one within the week for Michigan State, specifically breaking down their roster and talking more specifically about whether I think they'll win or lose X games. That's not what I'm doing here. But they're a team with question marks. They're a team that's rebuilding. They're a team that had a disappointing campaign last year. They went 5-7 after mostly being projected to be a 9-3 or 10-2 football team. And they went 5-7. It's disappointing. So they're coming in a little under the radar potentially, but even if they are under the radar, I don't know if Michigan State is going to make that same whether I don't want to use the word magic because that to me that feels like I'm discrediting Mel Tucker of what he did in 2021, but I guess that's the best word to use. I don't know if they can make the same magic happen in 2021 and they can translate it to 2023 because of the toughness of their schedule. Again, Ohio State on the road, Iowa on the road, Minnesota on the road, along with Rutgers on the road before the Michigan game. There are several spots for Michigan State. There are several trap games. There are several games against solid opponents. And I think that it just makes life hard. And that's a part of playing in the Big Ten East. It's a part of playing in college football. But in comparison to some of these other teams that Michigan State plays, like, for example, let's just say Minnesota or Nebraska. You know, Minnesota plays both Michigan and Ohio State. Nebraska only plays Michigan, and I'm just mentioning Michigan and Ohio State because they're the top two programs in the Big Ten. But then Minnesota, they play Northwestern. They play Purdue. They play in the Big Ten West. So you're not going to get an easy schedule in the Big Ten East already, and then to have Washington, who's going to be probably a top 10 team, come into East Lansing, it's going to be hard for Michigan State. If Michigan State is going to be a successful program in 2023, they're going to have to be mentally tough because there are going to be games, there are going to be several games where Michigan State, A, loses, B, wins within an inch of their life, or C, it's a slugfest, and you have to survive through it. And with the talent on deck, with the coaching staff continuity, which I don't think is a good thing. I think one of Jay Johnson or Scotty Hazelton should have been fired. There's just already a lot of question marks surrounding this team, and I think that this schedule is it's very daunting. But at the same time, this also does mean that Michigan State could make a lot of progress. They could be a very good football team. And you could sort of get the 2021 Nebraska treatment, where Michigan State has a record that is much worse than their actual on-field performance. Michigan State with this schedule could go 6-6 or 7-5, and in reality play like what you would think to be a 9-3 or 10-2 football team. That's really all I wanted to say for this video. Again, an actual breakdown of the schedule and, me predicting each game, just saying whether Michigan State will win or lose. That'll be coming within a week. Hit the notification bell if you haven't already so you can get notified when I drop my top 25 winter edition within the next 2 days. It's a very big video, very big project. I'm excited to release it, and I've done a lot of research for each team that I'm excited to present to you all. Subscribe again if you haven't already, and please like this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.